The cement mixer rumbled to life, spilling its gray contents onto Karen's driveway. She watched with a twisted smile as the thick liquid covered the pristine pavement, obscuring the neighbor's designated parking spot. "That'll teach him to park in my space," she muttered, wiping the sweat from her brow. Her HOA board position had its perks, chief among them, the ability to handle problems as she saw fit. Next door, Tom juggled his laptop and briefcase, hurrying to leave for work. He froze in his tracks, eyes widening at the growing cement pile encroaching on his side of the driveway. "What the?" he exclaimed, rushing over. "Karen, what are you doing?" The older woman turned, feigning innocence. "Oh, Tom, I'm just, fixing a little crack in the driveway. You know how these HOAs can be." Tom's face reddened with fury. "That's my parking spot you're covering. Are you out of your mind?" Karen tusked, wagging her finger. Now, let's not make a scene. I'm well within my rights as the HOA president to ensure the common areas are properly maintained. This isn't maintenance, this is sabotage," Tom shouted, gesturing wildly. "You can't just pour cement in my parking space." Nearby, a few curious neighbors poked their heads out, drawn by the commotion. Karen plastered on a saccharine smile. "I'm simply doing my duty, Tom. If you have an issue, I'd be happy to discuss it at the next board meeting." Tom clenched his fists, jaw working furiously. "Discuss it? You're destroying my property." Karen tusked again. Now, let's not be so dramatic. I'm sure we can come to an understanding." She shot him a warning glare. "Wouldn't want anything unfortunate to happen, would we?" Realization dawned on Tom's face, and his shoulders slumped in defeat. Glaring at the older woman, he turned and stomped back into his house, slamming the door behind him. Karen smiled triumphantly, watching as the cement hardened around the parking space. "That's what you get for crossing me, Tom," she muttered, already planning her next move. Later that evening, Tom paced his living room, foam pressed to his ear. "I'm telling you, she just came over and poured cement all over my parking spot. I can't believe the nerve of that woman." On the other end of the line, his wife, Sarah, let out an exasperated sigh. "I don't understand. Why would she do something like that?" "She's the HOA president, Sarah," Tom explained, running a hand through his hair. "Apparently, she thinks she can do whatever she wants. I tried to reason with her, but she threatened me." Sarah gasped. "Threatened you? Tom, this is completely unacceptable. You have to do something." I know. Tom paused, chewing his lip. "I'm going to try talking to her again tomorrow. Maybe I can get her to see reason." "I doubt that," Sarah scoffed. "This woman sounds like a real piece of work. You need to file a complaint or call the police or something." Tom sighed heavily. "I don't know, Sarah. I was hoping we could handle this peacefully. But what? Tom, she poured cement in your parking spot. That's vandalism, plain and simple." Sarah's voice rose in frustration. "You can't just let her get away with this." Pinching the bridge of his nose, Tom nodded. "You're right. I'll go talk to her again tomorrow. And if that doesn't work, I'll file a formal complaint with the HOA. This has to stop." "Good." Sarah's tone softened. "I'm sorry you're dealing with this, honey. I know how much you hate confrontation, but you have to stand up for yourself." "I know." Tom glanced out the window, eyeing the hardened cement with a sinking feeling. "Wish me luck." "Good luck," Sarah replied. "And Tom, don't let her intimidate you. You're in the right here." Tom took a deep breath. "I won't. Thanks, Sarah." Ending the call, he steeled himself for the confrontation to come. The next morning, Tom marched up to Karen's front door, determination etched on his face. He jabbed the doorbell, jaw set in a hard line as he waited. After a moment, the door swung open, revealing Karen's carefully coiffed hair and manicured nails. She feigned surprise, eyebrows arching. Why, Tom? What a pleasant surprise. What can I do for you? Tom cut straight to the chase. You know damn well why I'm here, Karen. I want you to undo what you did to my parking spot, right now. Karen's eyes narrowed. I'm afraid I don't know what you're talking about. She leaned against the doorframe, blocking his path. Don't play dumb with me, Tom growled. You poured cement all over my designated parking space yesterday. That's vandalism, and I won't stand for it. Karen tusked, wagging her finger. Now, Tom, let's not get ahead of ourselves. I was simply performing routine maintenance on the common area, as is my duty as HOA president. Bullshit, Tom exploded. You deliberately covered my spot to spite me. This isn't maintenance, it's sabotage, and I want it fixed immediately. The older woman's lips curled into a smug smile. I'm afraid I can't do that, Tom. The cement has already set, and it would be a waste of resources to remove it. She examined her nails nonchalantly. Besides, I believe the parking space is now part of the HOA's common area. You'll have to find somewhere else to park. Tom's face reddened with fury. You can't do this. That spot is mine, and you had no right to. Actually, I do have the right, Karen interrupted, her tone sickeningly sweet. As the HOA president, I have the authority to make decisions regarding the common areas. And this, she gestured to the hardened cement, is now a common area. Tom opened his mouth to argue, but Karen raised a hand, silencing him. I'd advise you to consider your next move very carefully, Tom. We wouldn't want any unfortunate incidents to occur, would we? The implication hung in the air, and Tom felt his blood run cold. Clenching his fists, he glared at the smug woman before him. This isn't over, Karen. I'm going to the authorities about this. Karen simply smiled. As you wish, but I wouldn't expect much sympathy if I were you. With that, she closed the door, leaving Tom seething on her doorstep. Later that day, Tom stood in the police station, his face etched with frustration as he recounted the morning's events to the officer behind the desk. And that's when she threatened me, he finished, his hands trembling slightly. I can't just let her get away with this. It's vandalism, plain and simple. The officer, a seasoned veteran with graying hair, listened intently, his brow furrowed in thought. I understand your concern, Mr. Lawson. However, this appears to be a civil matter between you and your HOA president. Tom's jaw dropped. A civil matter? She poured cement in my parking spot. Isn't that a crime? The officer held up a hand. Technically, yes, it could be considered criminal mischief. However, HOA disputes often fall into a legal gray area. Without clear evidence of malicious intent, it may be difficult to pursue criminal charges. But she admitted to it. Tom protested, and she threatened me. The officer nodded. I understand your frustration, but threats alone may not be enough to warrant a criminal case. My advice would be to file a formal complaint with the HOA board and seek legal counsel if necessary. Tom's shoulders sagged in defeat. So you're telling me there's nothing I can do? That she can just get away with this? I'm afraid it's not that simple, the officer said, his tone compassionate. The law can be complex, especially when it comes to HOA disputes. Your best course of action is to exhaust all civil remedies before considering criminal charges. Tom ran a hand through his hair, his mind racing. All right, fine. I'll file a complaint. But if that doesn't work, I'm coming back here, and I won't take no for an answer. The officer nodded. I understand, Mr. Lawson. I hope you're able to resolve this issue through the proper channels. Good luck. Tom turned and headed for the door, his jaw set with determination. I'm gonna need more than luck, he muttered under his breath. The next day, Tom arrived at the HOA office, his briefcase clutched tightly in his hand. He strode up to the receptionist's desk, his expression grave. I need to file a formal complaint against the HOA president, Karen Wilkins, he announced. The receptionist, a young woman with a weary expression, nodded and gestured to a nearby chair. "Have a seat, and I'll get the necessary paperwork for you." Tom reluctantly took the seat, his leg bouncing with nervous energy as he waited. Moments later, the receptionist returned with a stack of forms. "Here you go. Fill these out with the details of your complaint, and we'll schedule a board meeting to address the issue." Tom took the papers, his brow furrowing as he scanned the fine print. "How long will this process take?" The receptionist shrugged apologetically. "That depends on the next scheduled board meeting. It could be a few weeks, maybe longer." Tom's jaw tightened. "A few weeks? That's unacceptable. Karen poured cement in my parking spot yesterday. I need this resolved immediately." The receptionist held up her hands in a placating gesture. "I understand your frustration, Mr. Lawson, but the HOA has its own procedures to follow. I can't expedite the process, even in cases of alleged misconduct." Gritting his teeth, Tom began filling out the forms, his handwriting sharp and angular. As he scribbled down the details of the incident, a sense of dread crept up his spine. "What if Karen tries to pull something else while I'm waiting for this to be addressed?" he asked, his eyes narrowed. The receptionist offered a sympathetic smile. "I'd suggest documenting any further incidents and contacting the police if you feel threatened or your property is in danger. But the HOA board will need to handle the complaint through our established channels." Tom let out a frustrated sigh and continued filling out the forms, his mind racing with scenarios of what Karen might do next. As he signed his name at the bottom, he couldn't shake the feeling that the system was stacked against him. With a heavy heart, he handed the paperwork back to the receptionist. "There. Now what?" "We'll review your complaint and schedule a board meeting," the receptionist replied. "I'll be in touch with the details." Tom nodded, his jaw set with determination. "You better be. I'm not going to let Karen get away with this." As the days passed, Tom grew increasingly anxious, his eyes constantly scanning the neighborhood for any sign of Karen's meddling. He spent countless hours poring over HOA bylaws, searching for loopholes or legal recourse, but the bureaucratic red tape only seemed to tighten around him. Finally, the long-awaited HOA board meeting arrived. Tom sat in the cramped conference room, his leg bouncing nervously as the other board members filed in. Karen, of course, was the last to arrive, her perfectly coiffed hair and manicured nails a stark contrast to Tom's frazzled appearance. As the meeting commenced, Tom steeled himself, ready to present his case. But before he could speak, Karen raised her hand, a sickly sweet smile on her face. "Before we get started, I'd like to address a particular issue that's been brought to my attention," she purred, her gaze settling on Tom. "It seems one of our residents has been making unfounded accusations and causing quite a ruckus in the neighborhood." Tom's blood boiled, but he held his tongue, determined to let the process play out. Karen continued, her tone dripping with feigned concern. "Now, I know we all value our community and want to maintain a harmonious living environment. But these baseless claims and disruptive behavior simply won't do." She paused, allowing her words to sink in. "I'm afraid I have no choice but to recommend that this individual be fined for violating the HOA's code of conduct." Tom's head snapped up, his eyes wide with disbelief. "What? You can't be serious." Karen tusked, shaking her head. "I'm afraid I am, Mr. Lawson. Your harassment of the HOA president is unacceptable, and we simply won't tolerate it." The other board members murmured in agreement, their expressions a mix of sympathy and unease. Tom stood, his hands trembling with rage. "This is outrageous. She's the one who poured cement in my parking spot, and now you're punishing me for trying to fix it." Karen raised a delicate hand. Now, let's not make baseless accusations. As I've already stated, the parking area is now part of the HOA's common property, and any maintenance performed was done so in the interest of the community. Tom stared at her, his mouth agape. "You can't be serious. This is blatant retaliation, and you know it. The board members shifted uncomfortably in their seats, but no one spoke up in Tom's defense. Karen simply smiled, her eyes glinting with triumph. I'm afraid the decision has been made, Mr. Lawson. If you have any further issues, I'd suggest you take them up with our legal counsel. Tom felt his world crumbling around him, the weight of Karen's vindictive actions crushing him. As the meeting adjourned, he knew he had to find a way to fight back, or risk losing everything. Defeated but not deterred, Tom headed straight to the local news station, determined to expose Karen's abuse of power. He burst through the doors, his face flushed with anger, and demanded to speak with the editor-in-chief. After some persuasion, the editor agreed to hear him out. Tom laid out the entire sordid saga, from Karen's cement-pouring stunt to the HOA board's biased decision to fine him. "This is outrageous," the editor exclaimed, shaking his head in disbelief. "An HOA president abusing her position to target a homeowner? That's a story we need to cover." Tom felt a glimmer of hope ignite within him. "So you'll help me? You'll expose what Karen's doing?" The editor nodded, a determined glint in his eye. "Absolutely. This is the kind of corruption and abuse of power that our readers need to know about. We'll get our investigative team on this right away." Relieved, Tom provided the editor with all the relevant details and contacts, including the HOA board members and his own documentation of the incident. He left the news station with a newfound sense of purpose, confident that the media spotlight would force the HOA to finally take his complaint seriously. Over the next few days, the investigative team at the news station worked tirelessly, uncovering a pattern of questionable behavior and allegations against Karen. They interviewed other homeowners who had experienced similar issues with the HOA president, each story more outrageous than the last. Finally, the story went live, with a scathing expose that detailed Karen's cement-pouring scheme and the board's attempts to silence Tom. The article spread like wildfire, quickly gaining traction on social media and sparking outrage in the community. Within hours, the HOA board was flooded with calls and messages, demanding accountability and Karen's resignation. Faced with mounting public pressure, the board had no choice but to convene an emergency meeting to address the allegations. As Tom watched the news coverage unfold, a sense of relief and vindication washed over him. He knew that the battle was far from over, but for the first time, he felt like he had a fighting chance against the formidable HOA Karen. The emergency HOA board meeting was a tense and heated affair, with Karen desperately trying to maintain her grip on power. However, the weight of the evidence presented by the news investigation proved too much to ignore. One by one, the board members voiced their concerns, their once unwavering loyalty to Karen crumbling in the face of public scrutiny. Tom sat in the back of the room, his arms crossed, a triumphant glint in his eye as the tables turned. Finally, the board president, a typically meek and deferential man, stepped forward. "Karen, the board has reviewed the evidence and the overwhelming public outcry. We have no choice but to call for your immediate resignation as HOA president." Karen's face twisted in fury, her carefully cultivated composure slipping. "You can't be serious. I've done nothing wrong. This is all just a smear campaign by that meddling neighbor of mine." The board president shook his head. "The evidence speaks for itself, Karen. Your actions have undermined the trust and integrity of this HOA. You leave us no choice." Karen opened her mouth to protest, but the board president raised a hand, silencing her. "This is not up for discussion. You will resign, effective immediately, or we will be forced to pursue formal removal proceedings." Realizing that her reign of terror had finally come to an end, Karen's shoulders slumped in defeat. With a final, venomous glare at Tom, she stormed out of the room, slamming the door behind her. The remaining board members turned to Tom, their expressions a mix of contrition and relief. "Mr. Lawson, we sincerely apologize for the way this was handled. We will, of course, be removing the fine and restoring your parking spot immediately." Tom nodded, a small smile playing on his lips. I appreciate that, but the damage has already been done. I hope you'll use this as a lesson to hold your leaders accountable, no matter their position. The board members murmured in agreement, chastened by the public exposure of their own complicity. As Tom left the meeting, he felt a sense of satisfaction, knowing that his persistence and the power of the press had brought down the notorious HOA Karen. Though the road ahead was uncertain, Tom was determined to ensure that no one else would fall victim to Karen's brand of entitled, vindictive behavior. He had won this battle, but the war for justice in his community was far from over.